people wouldn't mute their mic. And so in the middle of the test, they'll be like, Dad, can you turn on the printer? And then everybody's just like, what?
Yeah, I definitely think so. For us at Northwestern, it's a quarter school, so we kind of got lucky in the sense that we got to start spring quarter just completely online. But that also meant like I had never met my teachers before in person.
You know, some professors I couldn't really cultivate a relationship with.
Kind of diminishes the whole like in-person connection you can make with them.
I mean, I definitely feel like I had less of a relationship with the professors and TAs than I would have in a normal quarter.
I found myself reaching out less because first of all, there's the time difference. They're a few hours ahead of me. And so the office hour times were very early in the morning.
A lot of our classes and discussion sections are asynchronous. We don't have to actually attend, but I try to attend as many office hours and classes as possible, just so that I can build some formative relationships with the professor.
There were a couple of professors that were aware of our situations and, took time through our classes. Like, we would have a Zoom class, and at the very beginning of the class, they would take 15 minutes to talk about how are you feeling about everything that's going on.
But it's definitely a lot harder than it was before, because before you could just pop in and say hi, but now you have to schedule an appointment or send out an email, that kind of stuff.
But I would say push yourself to just go in there. Just throw yourself in there.
And then when you find those overlap points where you just find something's interesting, just maybe staying after class a little bit to, ask the question, because if you genuinely find it interesting, why not learn a little more about it?
I got to spend a lot of time with one of my neuro professors this spring, and it was super awkward at first because I hopped on in. I thought other people would be in the office hours, right? It was me.
I've found that most professors, they'll appreciate that because you're appreciating what they're doing.
But it presents its own challenges because you're unfamiliar with this concept of being one-on-one with a professor when you can't really see his or her surroundings.
There were classes where the professors were really understanding. And so I think that passing those classes and getting through those classes was a lot easier. But given the other professors that didn't really know how to work Zoom or didn't really know how to upload lecture slides with notes or with a voiceover, those classes were a lot harder to pass.
I felt a lot less motivated, honestly. It's harder to pay attention in class.
Because not only it's all the material, there's you have to deal with technical difficulties, but also it's all the positive motivators, seeing your friends and being able to do homework together. It's kind of taken away.
I work better with people. I'm pretty social, and I like to work with people at least a couple hours a day. And I felt I was just on my own that whole quarter.
Because if you fall behind, and you probably will, it's there's no one really keeping you in check.
The difference between an A student and a B student last quarter was not about how hard you worked. It was just about your home situation.
That intersection of, being at home, kind of distracting in the test taking environment.
Given that my motivation was lower, they stopped giving us grades. And then I think our test format changed. So it was easier than it was at school, but it was harder given that I didn't keep up with the material.
My experience was a little different than what a lot of different people says or felt. I don't think the quality of education is any much less than it is in person, especially since a lot of the core classes right now that I'm taking, I would have actually just watched it on Zoom or lecture recordings in class because our school size is so big regardless.
Yeah, I think the most important thing about COVID was making sure that you had a solid group that you could work with for every class.
And getting used to breakout rooms and all that kind of stuff, understanding how it works, because I think that ultimately in the end, I use it a lot for group projects.
Huge thing that I learned to do is kind of separate my study space with my living space.
Like have a specific place and like a specific time. Like I go somewhere and study, and like I made sure that I wasn't in my bed like during my classes. And
creating a good routine too, like trying to keep that structure, that sense of structure, without having to like walk to my classes and be reminded of that. So like waking up at like a specific time, and then like eating at a specific time, and then getting ready.
I had to schedule like FaceTime calls to work on P-sets, to just talk to people. I think if I hadn't done that, I would just sat in my computer all day on YouTube.
Don't take planning for granted with online school.
Like it's not different. You think it's different and you feel like it's different. You have the illusion you have more time. You don't have more time.
So this one, I guess I'm a bit more fortunate because I pledged a engineering frat, and so a bunch of my P-bros are in my classes, and it's really nice to have that.
If I didn't have friends already established or people that I was studying with, I wouldn't have been able to find anybody.
Working in big groups is hard because only one person can talk at a time. You can't have two pairs of like discussions going on because you're all on one Zoom call.
I'm in South Korea right now, and if I was to be paired up with another student in the States, managing different time zones is actually the hardest part.
But one of the things the professor did was on the discussion board, he did a participation thing, and the first week's participation credit was to say, where you're doing your online learning from.
There's forums on Facebook where I say, hey, is there anyone taking, like financial information systems this summer? And then who's in Korea? And there was a lot of people who were open to like direct messaging me on Facebook.
I just ended up looking for professors in like the fields I wanted to do, like law and business, poli-sci, econ, that type of stuff. And like just like shot my shot.
Yeah, it was just a lot of interviews, a lot of coffee chats, a lot of cold calling.
And she was like, oh, I think I have something that might interest you. And we had a Zoom, and like we bonded really well, which was really nice.
So I would say this is the kind of time where you just use your network and like ask friends, ask around. I got mine through like a friend of a friend of a friend.
I actually just put my resume in Indeed.com because there's this place called House of Democrats, and they were looking for interns like virtually. So I just put in my resume, and like literally the next day I got something back saying, like we have a position for you.
Mostly it was like posting on different platforms. So like LinkedIn and Twitter being like, here's like a bunch of my, like, here's my resume, here's a bunch of stuff I've done, here's a link to my GitHub. And then like recruiters like, please reach out to me. And then he was also independently applying for a lot of jobs. Like I'm sure you've seen there are a lot of databases that people made about what companies are still hiring, or like certain companies that were doing well, like actually opened up new internship positions this spring in order to take advantage of people who lost their internships.
So I'd already had my internship like scheduled, I was ready to go, and then it got dropped in late March. It was this is definitely a frustration I heard from a lot of people. A lot of companies were a little slow to get back to interns because obviously we're their least priority. But then after that, at least from the tech side, a lot of big tech companies opened up more internship positions because they knew it was happening. I think I just had a lot of time on my hands. Like that is the one thing that I had a lot of. So I just applied, put stuff out there. A lot of people were very helpful with students who got things canceled, and something just clicked. It was definitely easier to recruit during quarantine from like a time perspective than it was during the school year.